Houston, Indy Media, part of Independent Media Center's international network of producers bringing you grassroots, non-corporate coverage of global and local events.
AconC works to be a tool for freedom in content expression and an information revolution.
This week's show is brought to you by AconC Productions, news, community, and cultural conversations to agitate, organize, and cultivate. This is Angela Concourtney.
AconC Productions.
Aquí no hay frontera. Esta tierra, lo que nombraron los Estados Unidos, detiene la sangre de nuestra raza. Somos una gente ancestral con un futuro brillante. ¡Que viva México!
How then can they talk about some border when they are the invaders? And how then can they reform immigration when they invaded their neighbor? America existed before Columbus. 30,000 years ago, we were here in Mexico. Where's all my Moshikans at? Cock your rifle, let it blow. Blow, 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 blow. All invaders gotta go. This one for my people, my Mexicano people. The whole earth is yours and no human is illegal. Come across the border, every woman and man. The U.S. is the alien. Mexico, this is your land. How then can they talk about some border when they are the invaders? And how then can they reform immigration when they invaded their neighbor? We see the same men living out like cavemen, coming out the cave and them trying to enslave men. How can we obey them? It's better we betray them. Rise up like the Reverend Nat Turner and slay them. Mexican people, get your education. Tell your little children that this is their nation. You own California, you own Arizona, you own San Diego and Texas, the Lone Star. So how then can they talk about some border when they are the invaders? And how then can they reform immigration when they invaded their neighbor? Take a look at Mexico, then look at New Mexico. What is a New Mexico if there is a Mexico? All of America, they used to call a Mexum. Immigration laws are a fraud and we reject them. We are the all-map, Toltec, pyramid builder, astronomer, philosopher, and healer. Mexican people, rise up right now and realize this is your land now. Sing, how then can they talk about some border when they are the invaders? And how then can they reform immigration when they invaded their neighbor? I sing again. How then can they talk about some border when you are the...
On Wednesday, September 30th, the Houston City Council, by an almost unanimous vote, passed the resolution for Houston to join a growing number of cities and states across the country now officially observing Indigenous Peoples Day as an alternative to Columbus Day. The vote passed with a 14-2 vote, with Greg Travis of District G and Mike Knox, at-large position 1, being the lone dissenters, and instead vigorously proposing an amendment to change the date of observance to the first Monday in October. The vote on Wednesday does not make Indigenous Peoples Day an official City of Houston holiday, nor does it replace Columbus Day as a holiday, since Houston does not observe it as such, and the city cannot override a federal holiday. Councilman Greg Travis, seconded by Mike Knox, at first purported that the amendment was rooted in the desire to thoroughly acknowledge Indigenous Peoples Day and give it its own spotlight and holiday. But when their amendment was struck down, their arguments quickly shifted to calls of political theater, bigotry, placating activists to just go away, and subsuming the Italian experience.
I think if we're going to be doing this with Indigenous People Day, I think we need to make it special. It needs its own special day. I don't understand why we can't do that, because I think when you piggyback off an Italian American Day, you're not making this a special day for Indigenous people. But we also don't want to be insulting or offensive to the Italian American Day by making them share a day.
I agree with my colleague on this. I mean, we do a lot of things that are symbolic, and this is an opportunity for us to do something meaningful and real. Otherwise, we're just political theater, placating a group of people because we just want them to go away.
I'm trying to elevate this day, and as a city, and I don't think it bodes well to have it share a day that's there to celebrate the Italian Americans. Mayor, I see those other cities paying lip service to it. If they really want it to be important, they will set aside a separate day and they will celebrate that day. Mayor, the optics of this, I'm very concerned about how this looks to the Italian Americans. And the Italian Americans faced decades of discrimination in this, and this was their day, and now we're making them share it. It's disturbing to hear some of the bigotry that's being offered here. And it actually, if you look at how Italian Americans were treated back then, they were treated very similar to Black Americans. Obviously, I don't want to equate Italian Americans to the Black American experience because they were two different experiences, but they were similar in many respects. I don't think that we want to sit there and crap on their day.
Mayor Turner, can we get started? Because everybody want to talk about Black folks, and so it's time to talk about Black folks because this conversation may go a whole nother way. So can we call this vote?
Council members Martha Castix Tatum, District K, and Abby Kameen, District C, stressed the resolution was exactly what the Native advocates have been asking for and what is deserved.
I think that if things are important for us to make decisions on, the people who have called and who are in support of this amendment have asked us to declare the second Monday of October as Indigenous People Day. And that is what makes it important and significant for them as Indigenous people. And I think as a council, we can't determine what makes it important to the Indigenous people. The Indigenous people and the people who support Indigenous Peoples Day have told us what was important to them. And so what I think is important is that if we support Indigenous Peoples Day and Indigenous people, we would support what they have asked of us and not feel like it is our place to tell them how we should celebrate what's important to them.
I don't believe it's lip service or placating a group who has consistently come before us and for years to advocate for specifically what is on the agenda as a resolution to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day. And out of respect for their heritage, their desires, and the history of our city, our state, and our country, I think it's important that we not put our own agendas on the table, but actually listen to what the people are saying.
Many of our descendants stayed and sought to live in harmony with the Europeans in this new America. New, I might add, only to them.
My name is Melody Walsh. I moved to Houston 20 years ago to dance with the Houston Ballet here, and I am the daughter of an Italian immigrant father and a mother who is of Cherokee descent. And it feels really important that we honor our whole history and not just the colonial history that is taught right now.
One of the things that makes Houston so special is our diversity. People from every corner of the world call our great city home, and we embrace them as Houstonians.
Time to observe Indigenous Peoples Day will allow the citizens to finally recognize our rich heritage and representing a huge step in healing and growth between the citizens of the city that are descendants of Native American ancestry.
This resolution does not aim to erase history or undo injustices, but it is an important step towards accuracy and inclusivity Officially recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day on the second Monday of October provides a more balanced representation of our cultural and diverse history.
Mayor Turner.
Yes.
Councilman Peck.
Yes.
Councilman Davis.
Yes.
Councilman Kamen.
Yes.
Councilman Evans Shabazz.
Yes.
Councilman Martin.
Yes.
Councilman Thomas.
Proudly, yes.
Councilman Travis.
No.
Councilman Cisneros.
Yes.
Councilman Gallegos.
Yes.
Councilman Pollard.
Yes.
Councilman Castex Tatum.
Yes.
Councilman Knox.
No.
Councilman Robinson.
Yes.
Councilman Kumar. Councilman Plummer.
Yes.
And Councilman Alcorn.
Yes.
15-2.
Okay, item passes.
Let us honor the ones who knew and loved this land from the beginning.
Against a backdrop of a Southern Plains Indian social song, those were the voices of Native advocates, Councilperson Robert Gallegos, District I, who has worked closely for the last few years with the community on this resolution, as well as the roll call of the entire City Council as they voted and passed on this milestone that now is officially Indigenous Peoples Day in Houston. One of these voices is a person I had the great fortune of meeting more than a decade ago. At the time, we were working with Creative Women Unite Collective, of which she was a co-founder, and I was struck by her fire, her spirit, and her unyielding commitment to her community. Although she's known by many names, Bianca Rivera is one of the most steadfast, focused, and unyieldingly committed people I have ever met.
For the last 20 years, my children and I have definitely advocated alongside others from our community asking for an Indigenous Peoples Day, just as an acceptance and awareness that as descendants of traditional Native American keepers of ceremony between here, Mexico City, all the way through the Southwest United States, it's just a good thing for us to just be able to come out and say, hey, we're still here, and we're keeping our doors open for citizens of the Houston area to be able to learn more about Native American traditions and ceremonies.
She is a Temaktiani, a teacher, a danzante, a bead girl, a musician, a graffiti artist, an activist, so many things. And so it's no surprise to me that over the last few years, along with various others, she has been one of the most resolute and constant advocates to work with council to help drive this Indigenous Peoples Day through to its passage.
I first met Bianca through KPFT's own programmer, DJ Zen. At that time, he was the host at a Third Ward poetry spot called Muddy Waters. He invited Bianca to one of the epic weekly open mic nights, and after that, I started attending her shows around town. Zen was also an advocate for Black and Brown unity, and whenever he was doing work around that, I would also again then run into Bianca. Black and Brown unity is also something we promote as AconC. When I first heard of Bianca, she had recently given birth and had just moved back to Texas from California, where she was doing work with Mujeres da Maíz. Really enjoyed attending her very unique hip-hop shows. At the time, they were called Underground Mergers. And I also had the opportunity to work with her with the organization she co-created called Creative Women Unite. In this recent conversation about Indigenous Peoples Day, I was really happy to hear about her children and all of the work that their mother has done. I feel like I've watched them grow up. She's always had them with her on the front lines and, out there in the world being the change that she wanted to see. So here's a little clip where she specifically talks about her daughter.
Out of everything, all the years of pushing this so that my children have some sort of form of foundation of ceremony in their lives, for all the times I've had to travel and leave my family and all these different things, to see my daughter's face light up when her photo is on the Houston Chronicle for 2 days consecutively, finally getting some sort of exposure for the amount of work our family's done for the last 7 years pushing this, but 20 plus years. I mean, her whole life, she's been having to hide who she is to her friends because people in Houston aren't aware of Native American culture. So it's my children have lived with this, right, for years. That's why we fought to change the mascots and all the different things in HISD, because we just feel like, hey, Native American children are alive and well, and you want to put us all in these boxes, but we're not. And so my kids, I think that they can kind of breathe a little bit now, you know, and to hear her say, hey, Mom, I'm proud. Like, wow, Indigenous Peoples Day got passed. Like, they listened, they actually did it. It's kind of like that to me is really important, because now it gives her a little bit more to stand on.
Idle No More
calls all people
to join in a peaceful revolution,
to honor
indigenous sovereignty
and protects the land and waters
for all peoples.
We must repair violations
to our land and our water,
live the spirit
of our treaty relationships,
work towards justice,
and protect Mother Earth.
Canadians,
Americans,
global people.
We are the protectors of Mother Earth.
It's my future.
It's your future.
Our future.
Do not sit.
It's time.
Become idle no more.
La cobra, toda denunciando, junta de esta vida la zozobra. Yo me revelo contra eso, me revelo, contra el poder del sistema, me revelo, contra la supremacía, me revelo, contra la falta de amor, me revelo, contra toda la injusticia, me revelo, me revelo, me revelo. Que nunca es bueno el celo y búscate un consuelo, comete un cucumelo, complácete ese anhelo, me pongo el espejuelo, derrito todo el hielo, te presto mi pañuelo pa' que seque el riachuelo, me corto este pelo y te llevo al cielo, te quiero. Bendiciones pa' ese vuelo, y comprenderás y te asombrarás, y me acompañarás y sabrás que más deberás y merecerás. Tú también podrás, vencerás, tocarás las demás fibras de las piedras. Independientes, siempre, aquí seguiremos cruda.
Okay, so my artist name is Giawitsochil. Nobody can say that. It's a Nahuatl word that means flower and rain combined. So I translated it to rainflower. And my traditional name is Mapihampalkichache, which just means little green bird that flies fast in every direction in the Guawitecan language, because that's the language of our ancestors here in Texas. And so I go by Abuela Mapi for short, because the Grandmother Council in Mexico City acknowledged my traditional name here from Texas, and that's what they gave me when they gave me this altar. So my enslaved name here on my birth certificate is Bianca Rivera. So that's kind of the reason why I have different names, per se, because I've had to kind of go with what everybody around me understood enough about my identity, plus trying to hide myself with artist names was a lot easier because I'm a single mom for the most part with 3 children that are also by my side at the forefront. And I just didn't really want to put us all out there like that. All these years being in South Texas, it's really difficult to, you know, fight against police brutality or make a statement on behalf of Indigenous people. This is the first time I'm actually publicly saying my colonized name, though. I've never actually acknowledged myself as Bianca Rivera.
Bianca discusses her Catholic school education and when she first began to notice she was different than her predominantly white classmates.
I would say when I was in elementary school, because I went to mainly private school that was predominantly white and Catholic. And every time I looked in the mirror and every summer that I got darker, we didn't have the kind of history that we needed to be taught. So I think all the racism was thrown at me. I was the darkest kid in the class. So I learned really to live with racism, like as part of just growing up around good old boy types, you know, and their children. And then as I got older, when I went into high school, I started to really question race a little more, coming out of the barrio and trying to understand the dynamics of why some economic impacts had influence on my homies in different capacities growing up. Like, oh, well, we were saying things like, as long as the cops don't beat us or we're not dead or in jail by the time we're And then I realized when I got out of my body, when I went back to my parochial school environment, here people are talking about having long futures and acquiring wealth and going off to college. And I could see the economic differences. So it made me question where I sat in all of that, you know? College was when I think I had the rude awakening. It was a professor of my world history class in college that told me, like, hey, you realize you have indigenous roots, right? Like, I'm from Spain and I know what our people did to your people here. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he gave me the papal canon laws of how indigenous people were affected by colonization through the Crusades. And it was like a shock to understand that the religion I had been following my whole life was actually a part of the assimilation and colonization of the indigenous people of Americas.
Bianca chronicles how her work towards the recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day in Houston began.
In 2012, there was a movement started out of Canada that was called Idle No More. And there were 10 to 12 active members at the time of different nations, both from Canada, the United States, Mexico, and Guatemala. And we were able to sit at the table and discuss what it would look like to make some form of an indigenous movement in Houston. A lot of them were older, so like it's a little more difficult to organize with elders that maybe are not as mobile. They don't have the ability to go clear across town, but we decided to start having vigils in the Galleria area and protesting the pipelines and just trying to get aware that sacred territories were being desecrated to build these pipelines. And from there, we were able to organize the first Indigenous Peoples March, which we called decolonization marches, starting in 2013. And I had done research and found out that Houston was one of the places that had a Columbus statue. There were only 7 in place at the time. And I thought it was interesting that I lived here my whole life and I didn't know there was a Columbus statue there. So I asked some of the elders that I was working with, and they agreed that we should go out there, peacefully rally and stand out on Montrose and hold signs and have youth and elders come together. And we made shackles that we placed symbolically back onto him. And we had a speak out and, you know, brought out drummers and singers and people to just represent different forms of indigenous community. So people came from all over the state. It was really nice.
These are songs from the 2014 Decolonization March in Bell Park, the former home of Houston's Christopher Columbus statue.
All of you that drove from many different distances around Houston, thank you for your support of indigenous people, resistance, and our culture. The purpose of bringing us together is to show that we still have a presence here. Some of us still take care of the sacred traditional ways. Some of us come together in a resistance within a European-based society that has structured our children to forget who they are, rip their identity, and try to make them feel like they're not fully human, which has been the purpose of colonization all along. So as defenders of our ways, as you know, as we say, survivors of the genocide, I just want to thank each and every one of you for having enough ganas, like we say, to come out on a Saturday morning, you know, in front of all these people here that maybe don't understand why, like, we would want to come and represent who we are, respect the traditions that we come from, and we also remember all of our ancestors that fought for all of us to be able to survive. But I was reminded here recently, too, to thank all the ones that stopped fighting 7 generations ago and made a decision to become colonized and assimilated so that we could actually be here together as survivors. That's another thing that I really had never taken into consideration in the 17 years that I've been around this. So I want to apologize to my ancestors that I always forgot about, that actually decided to become colonized and to become the slaves and to get on their knees and do whatever it was that the oppressors say. So I want to say about that much.
And we did that for 3 years in a row. And then in 2017, we were able to ask the city to give us the first proclamation. And we were asking them to read it out loud at the city council meeting, not just give us the piece of paper because, you know, anybody can pretty much get a proclamation. We showed up in regalia. We showed up, you know, in front of the actual city council, talking to them, asking them to I suppose, acknowledge us, right? They say, hey, we're in your district. We're inside the city limits. We're giving free classes in the parks. We are performing healing ceremonies that are open to the community. We just wanted you guys to be aware that we're still here.
This is the presentation of the proclamation at the Houston City Council meeting on November 14, 2017. Presenting the proclamation are Council Member Carla Cisneros and Mayor Pro Tem Ellen Cohen, and is received by Elder Daniel Antun, with comments from Council Member Jerry Davis and Robert Gallegos.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be bringing this proclamation forward. November is a month to give thanks and to celebrate a lot of different things. But I want to say one of the things I'm thankful for are the indigenous people that are standing behind me, and that I want to also take this opportunity to say that my grandmother was Mayan, and so I'm especially thrilled to be part of this presentation because it represents part of my heritage as well. Our city, our diverse city, the richness of all the different cultures here, and the blended families like mine that represent so many different cultures makes me really proud to be a Houstonian. So hundreds of nomadic tribes have been recorded living, hunting, farming, and residing in Houston and along the Gulf Coast, coastal Southern Plains regions. Approximately 60 to 110 million people with a Native American population existed 500 years ago across the Americas. Indigenous people have lived upon this land prior to European settlement, and we value the progress society has accomplished through indigenous people's knowledge, labor, technology, science, philosophy, arts, and deep culture. The Diamond Knoll site was discovered in 1996 in northwestern Harris County. Archaeologists claimed it is one of the oldest digs found in North America, dating from 10,000 to 14,000 years ago. These Stone Age human remains, found with fragments of bison teeth, ceramics, and hunting darts, became the largest excavation into an early archaic age, acknowledging Paleo-Indian occupation in southeast Texas. On October 12, 2017, Indigenous Peoples Day will be observed in recognition of those numerous contributions that Indigenous people have made to the United States. The City of Houston commends all involved in this worthwhile endeavor and extends best wishes for a successful observance of Indigenous Peoples Day.
You notice the dates have been a little changed, but it's okay. Therefore, I, Ellen Cohen, Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Houston, on behalf of Sylvester Turner, Mayor of the City of Houston, hereby proclaim October 12, 2017 as Indigenous Peoples Day in Houston, Texas. Congratulations.
From all of us to all of you, thank you very much for this proclamation. It means a lot to us. It means that we can prove who we are now. We can walk with pride. We'll take those long steps. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We thank you very much. I know this is a small token, and I'm speaking for myself now, no one else. But this is a small token of what the City of Houston can do for you. This day does not, it pales in comparison to what you all have done and the sacrifices that your ancestors have made in this country. And so we appreciate you having to go through the things that you've gone through and continue to go through and still have a positive spirit on life and how to continue to just survive and live and to make great things of what you're going through right now. And we appreciate you. Again, I'm speaking for no one else but myself. And again, I say thank you so much. Me personally, I do believe that the day needs to be changed to Indigenous Day. And I appreciate, again, you giving the history of your accounts of what's happened in this country. So thank you. At this point in time, I would like to recognize Councilmember Gallegos.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments, Councilmember Davis.
In regards, again, congratulations. I'm also with Councilmember Davis. This is just a small token in my part in regards to many cities have already recognized Indigenous Day instead of Columbus Day. Columbus, unfortunately, is getting credit of discovering America, but no, the Native Americans discovered America, and it was Christopher Columbus that just started the colonization of the Americas. It was Christopher Columbus who started the slave trade in the Americas, but yet here we are recognizing this man. So again, I know that Los Angeles and Seattle, Phoenix, Boulder, Colorado, Santa Fe, Cruz, California, Los Angeles County, Berkeley, California, Denver, Boulder, Colorado, Albuquerque, Portland, they all recognize Indigenous Day instead of Columbus Day, and I'm hoping the City Council soon will correct that, and we'll now then recognize Indigenous Day instead of Columbus Day. Thank you.
We did that again 2018. And then this past year, Councilmember Gallegos really wanted to get it in front of City Council to vote on. And so we strategized this past few months and talked about what it would look like to be respectful of everybody involved, because again, it's very delicate when you're talking about breaking down colonial mindsets, when you're talking about bursting bubbles of what people thought or knew to be truth. But it's also very important that the local Indigenous people have the right to rewrite our own narratives. It's our right to teach our children what we know to be truth, not just whatever is written in the history books, right? Because we know that the history is rewritten by the victors, right, of war. And this war is continuous because after the war, there's the colonization, and then there's the assimilation. And that's part of what we're living out is the mental assimilation. So in the way the Spaniards learned to enslave the native people, they used to whip us and then laugh and say, hey, one day we won't even have to be whipping you guys anymore because we're going to mentally mess with you so much for so many generations that you guys are going to start fighting each other. And that's what we're living out today.
You talk about the process of change, of getting past all that colonization. Have you seen a change from the first time you came to the City Council?
Yes, at first I think they were in shock because we have no federally recognized tribes here, not even state recognized tribes. And the ones that are close to our territory were also placed from other areas around the United States. So to see the face of somebody actually saying, hey, we're your local Indigenous community and we've been here for 20 plus years doing these things, I think it was baffling to them, because, well, we might go to the powwow once a year, or we might, hear about certain things around the state, but you don't see it right here in Houston, right? And so we had to let them know, like, hey, we've been helping to bring this style of Indigenous dance from Mexico. We've been doing this type of ceremonies. We've been bringing elders and teachers and trying to maintain integrity and respect in certain formats of our traditional ceremonies. They didn't know what we were talking about. So a lot of it's been about educating them. And then, of course, talking about the atrocities that Columbus did to the Indigenous people. So we also had to be very clear to them how offended we were for having that statue still up publicly in the city. And now they seem to have done a little more research. Some of the people have changed, obviously, on the council. But because of Cisneros and Gallegos being consistent and backing up, listening to us and allowing us to have a space to speak, Cisneros was the council member that asked me to come preside one of their meetings. And I presided that city council meeting the best way I could, following, the spirit of the ancestors and listening to what Grandfather Buffalo was asking, which was acknowledgement. It's like, remind them why this is called Buffalo Bayou. It's like, okay, stuff like that. I've had to be real still and trying to understand, because this work that we do is not for self or individual or our group in any capacity. That's why I won't even claim a tribal affiliation. It's like there has just been this 183 years of Houston existence and native silence, and people are just going to act like we're just all gone. You can't do that.
After all the years of organizing, last week, Tuesday, September 29, 2020, There was public comment from you and others, and then on Tuesday, September 30th, Council debated, voted, and made official Indigenous Peoples Day. What were you thinking and feeling now that you're here, not at an ending necessarily, but a new beginning?
I listened. Tuesday, we had session to speak. So 3 of us spoke. Dr. Norma Perez, HCC Vice Chancellor, Melody Walsh, ballerina from Houston Ballet with also Italian heritage, and me. And I actually read an excerpt from an article from Houston Family that I found online from dated 2013, also written by a woman that seemed to have enough knowledge about Native American roots to put something out. I mean, Houston Family Magazine is pretty big, you know? And so I told them, I'm reading an excerpt. These are not my words, you know? But they still quoted me, right? As if it was me. It doesn't matter at this point who's saying it. It's like we're shaking the foundation of what everybody knew, including my own parents, right? My own parents, like, wow, you guys did that. They watched us do that, right? But in their generation, they never thought they'd see something like this, you know? And I'm hoping my parents will be out there to not just watch, but participate, you know, because we're asking people to come back into the circle. We're asking people to acknowledge their history and their roots again, and not be embarrassed about it, because it's like the internal, again, racism towards ourselves of the lineages that are inside of us. You know, it's the Spaniard fighting the indigenous person inside of you. It's ugly to be Native. It's, oh, pobre Native, you know. But the atrocities that they did to our people, they still need to be spoken about. Our ancestors still need to have a voice of some sort in all of this, because they're no longer here. And they're the ones that suffered. And their blood is in the soil of the foundations of these major cities now. And it's beyond desecration of their spirits. It's like, it fuels us with so much rage that at times we can't even speak about it. Like, the only thing we can do is hold tobacco and think thoughts and just put it on the earth and just like to let it go. Because there's so much pain. It's just like embedded in our DNA. And so the more you research or learn or go into these Native American ceremonies that when you connect with the fires again and stuff, those are the things that we've had to do for generations now to be able to bring ourselves back to the original feeling of like, okay, this is our connection to Mother Earth again. This is how our ancestors did it. You know, even though we're still functioning in this government, all these labels, all these things, right? But it's so simple: fire, water, wind, earth.
Indigenous identity is a truly complex and somewhat controversial topic. Hillary Weaver, in her article, Indigenous Identity, What is it and Who Really Has It, in American Indian Quarterly, notes that there is little agreement on precisely what constitutes an Indigenous identity. How do you measure it? And who truly has it? Indeed, there is not even a consensus on appropriate terms. For many just now getting to working through assimilation that haven't unpacked those complex historical and identity issues yet, Bianca shared her thoughts on where one can begin to break it all down.
Maybe stop and realize that their ancestors may have been part of the colonization that actually put their lives in danger, and they weren't told or aware that they had any tribal affiliations. Because think about it, if your family killed a Texas Ranger, you couldn't just exist in Texas 80 years ago. That wasn't going to happen. You had to move. You had to change your name. You had to change your identity. So that was one of the things that I was referencing, how one year in the census in 1830, my family was listed as Indian. 1840, they're listing us as Mexicans. You could only be Texian or Mexican here. So a lot of this Indigenous Peoples Day, I think, for me personally, is just to start to have these conversations, because down here in the South, the good old boy mentality is bombarded into our brains by 7th grade. Texas is one of the only places where they force you to have state history indoctrinated into you. So we have children that are descendants of people of genocide from Native American territories talking about manifest destiny is good.
Columbus Day was designated a federal holiday by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1934, and since 1971 has been observed on the second Monday in October. Just a few years after the holiday's designation, a Native American activist proposed a replacement, and participants at the 1977 United Nations International Conference on Discrimination Against Indigenous Populations in the Americas proposed that Indigenous Peoples Day replace Columbus Day, and it took until 1990 for South Dakota to become the first state to rename Columbus Day, and Berkeley, California became the first city to make that change in 1992. They wanted for the holiday to acknowledge that Native people are the first inhabitants of the Americas and encourage Americans to rethink the history that we've taken for granted since grade school. The resolution proposed and passed notes that October 12, 1492 marks one of the most significant dates to all Indigenous people of the Americas, the beginning of colonization of Indigenous people that forever changed their identity, cultures, and achievements. The area around present-day Houston was home to many different groups, bands, and tribes, and the city of Houston recognizes and values the historic, cultural, and contemporary significance and contributions made to this community by all our region's past and present Indigenous peoples. Officially recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day on the second Monday of October provides a more balanced representation of our region's cultural and diverse history and constitutes a small act of restitution for the hardships endured by Indigenous people since the onset of European colonization of the Americas. As Leo Kilsback, a professor of American Indian Studies at Arizona State University, told History.com, Columbus Day is not just a holiday. It represents the violent history of colonization in the Western Hemisphere. Native organizer Anthony Tamez Pachel from Chicago notes that these changes are not a way to erase our history or erase what was done, because we want to make sure that what happened is taught. But the United States has a history of celebrating people that shouldn't be celebrated. We shouldn't celebrate people that have committed genocide. Tamez Pachel, who is Cree, Lakota, and Black, feels that for us to celebrate a man who's done these horrible atrocities against Indigenous people is a slap in the face. It is wrong to spread false narratives of what actually happens. We have to start telling the truth even in our schools. That history being taught in schools is something that Councilman Mike Knox argued about during Council's debate on the resolution.
Frankly, the word alternative is a binary choice. You can choose to celebrate Indigenous Persons Day, or you can choose to celebrate Columbus Day. And I don't see the purpose for that other than to overwrite history or to make a jab at, what's being taught in schools today about Columbus.
Many share the ideas of Councilperson Knox that argue that many of these changes are somehow erasing another's experience, or it's a dislike or hatred for America, or even that we're simply trying to rewrite history. So are these changes a revision or a correction?
It's a correction. It's an ability to have a space to speak on behalf of our ancestors who had no voice. It's the ability to be able to remind our grandchildren who they come from. How can I explain to my great-grandchildren? I don't know who we are, but I just know nobody from our family came off of any boats here. We've just been here for generations. All these flags passed us, the border crossed us. One day we were Indian, the next day we were Mexican, then we were listed Caucasian, then we were listed Latino, then we were listed Hispanic. Now I'm claiming Mexican-American, Tejano roots, and I just don't know where I'm from. Are you serious? That's not the kind of future I want for any of our people. And that's the reason why I'm adamantly speaking only on behalf of Texas natives, again, integrated with Mexican and Texian history. I can't speak on behalf of all the other 565 federally recognized tribes. I can only do diligence for the DNA coming out of this body and the paperwork that I have.
In a January 2020 article in the New York Times by Jill Cohen, she looked at how history is presented in textbooks in different states. Her colleague, Dana Goldstein, published an in-depth analysis of American textbooks used in both California and Texas. The books were from the same publishers, yet were different based on the politics of the region. In this segment, we asked Bianca, is Texas history slanted?
Yes, on purpose. According to the original Constitution of the Republic of Texas, which actually Sam Houston signed off on, they said that they would never speak about the establishment of the Republic, for there would be constant civil unrest. So originally, it was against the law for you to speak about past events that had happened. Because once they made open territory for Texas, trying throughout Manifest Destiny create the expansion, all it was James Townsend and all their outlaws, right? That's the original Caucasian portion of cowboy history coming down. The whole giddy up cowboy thing, really, it's a mixture of Native Americans and African people all learning to work with these animals, these livestock. Not everybody can tame a wild buck. Not everybody can, corral cows, and these colonizers didn't do it by themselves. So they needed us and they used us. And in the level of property, the very first Constitution again of Texas, it states the white man, all the land he can claim, all his livestock, his slave, and then at the very bottom it said the red man. So that gave us 0 human rights, and there were more lynchings of Native Americans and Mexicans in Texas alone that people aren't even aware of because it wasn't documented, because we were killed like rats and roaches to a point of just extermination. It was just get rid of them, throw them in a bunch of graves and get them out of here. There was no need to record us. There was no need to count. I mean, if anything, during the time when they were purchasing scalps, that was about the only time. You only needed to get this part right here and cut it off and then show for how many natives you killed and then get paid. And then they want to get upset because our people started doing it back to their people. And then all of a sudden we were merciless savages who go around collecting scalps. No, we're actually just divvying back what was dished to us. But again, history is written by those who win, right? So they referenced us as the children of the forest. That's literally how Sam Houston recorded Indigenous people. Because again, you have to imagine marshlands, you have to imagine lots of trees, you have to imagine the land being bayou swamp, right? So the people learn to live inland and on the coastal plains, and they walk because everybody's nomadic. So you have hundreds of tribes coming through here, probably from all the way from the Mississippi all the way across. People just kept moving. Nobody stayed in one area. So in the Houston area, we are looking at 15 different tribes that would stay up and down and around the coast, travel, walk all the way as far down as Corpus Christi. They were fishing, they were hunting, they were gathering. Then for 6 months in the year, they'd go a little further inland to be able to plant crops to come back to. Some warrior societies would go all the way out to go hunt more jerky meat and bring it back. There was a lot of movement happening, functioning with the seasons of the land. And one of the things I was listening to an elder talk about was paying attention to the birds. It's something that I teach in public presentations, because if we watch the migration of the birds and we know the patterns, then we also know when they're going inland very rapidly, like they did 3 days before Hurricane Harvey came, they'll be the ones to tell you something big is coming in from the Gulf. And that's what our ancestors followed. So we were following the buffalo, we were following the deer, we were following, our food resources so that we could survive. And that was one of the things that the colonizers used against us by killing off all the buffalo and running them all out west and then just killing all the rest of them out. They were able to actually start to starve the indigenous people. And then, of course, through more colonization and establishment of the missions, it's like, okay, well, if you come here and get baptized, we'll give you this food. So out of resource, again, people were starving. They needed to do what they needed to do because society was changing. So a lot of us got absorbed by other tribes through the altercations that were occurring. Other people ended up just, like I said, moving, forced, of course, to walk to the reservations. Here also in Texas, West Texas was a huge Apache camp and a stronghold between Geronimo and Cochise. So a lot of people decided to go join the fight. I can't imagine trying to recollect what our ancestors went through. That's the kind of thing that they dealt with. They had a way of life. Everything was good. They were maneuvering around each other. Tribes had their own ways of communicating with each other. That's a whole nother conversation, right? Because some people were like, oh, we fixed you guys. We We stopped you from being heathens. Okay, well, how much did you fix in 245 years? Look at the state of democracy in the United States today, right now. How much did you really fix? Our ancestors have been functioning here for thousands of years. You learn liberty, justice for all, freedom, these concepts that the Europeans that came over here, they didn't have because they were coming out of a caste monarchical system. They learned from the Haudenosaunee, original peoples of the United States here. It's baffling to me sometimes when we start to realize the mental assimilation that has occurred to our people at this point. And I'm not here to fight our own people. I'm not here to fight the government. I'm here to just make a clear statement that this is who we are. This is the territory we represent. These are the generations we are. And like I was saying before, my daughter is of Italian American and indigenous descendancy. So not all the Italian Americans are upset that there's an indigenous people state.
Many Americans are unable to track their exact lineage or descendancy for a myriad of reasons. In this next segment, Bianca talks about the destruction of indigenous lives, ideas, and cultures. She also examines the use of the word Holocaust in the American lexicon. Holocaust is defined as destruction or slaughter on a mass scale. However, in the American lexicon, the word Holocaust is generally reserved for the mass murder of Jews under the German Nazi regime.
But because, again, the things that are said, the things and the way they're explained to us, right? We're going to be upset about one type of Holocaust, but not about another. So we're going to be upset about millions of Jewish people killed in Germany under this ruling thumb of Hitler. But we're not going to speak much about the 100+ million Native Americans that were killed under the original influence and impact that Columbus had on the Americas. Yeah, he never set foot on United States shores. Yeah, he may not have even known where he was going and was found lost at sea, but he created the transatlantic human slave system. Now that's the common denominator that binds us.
Monday is October 12th, 2020. How is the city commemorating the first Indigenous Peoples Day?
The city of Houston is going to go ahead and declare it publicly. So the mayor is going to go out there, and Councilmember Gallegos, and I would hope that any other council member that voted yes for the day will be out there to support. It's going to be during lunchtime. I don't know exactly what time yet. And we're going to have a couple of elders out there and Aztec dancers and some Northern Plains singers around the Wakacha changing the sacred drum. And we'll see how many more people decide to come out. I know we're still in COVID times. They're asking for social distancing and masks, and they don't want too many people out there. So a lot of it hasn't been publicized yet. I don't know how the mayor's office is going to handle it. I'm just helping to organize part of it. And yeah, pushing in this last little few months has been like a lot of diligent work, quietly done, because we didn't want to make a big fuss. Because I think that if we get too riled up, and then it's like the community gets scattered in all the different points. I think we're still trying to focus what it is we're trying to do, and then we'll be able to give people more space to speak as we go. Change is good. It's going to open a new dialogue up, especially for HISD schools. I think that that's probably one of the most important things. Kids are going to question, what does that mean, Indigenous Peoples Day? Google it. Start looking it up. It's going to spark something inside of them. They're going to look at the color of their skin and go, hey, maybe I am also Native American, you know? And that's essentially what the point is for this next generation not to be lied to anymore.
Well, I don't know about you, Angela, but it has been a pleasure working with you to put this together and take a look back through history and acknowledge the history that was created this year with Indigenous Peoples Day. It's been an honor to interview Bianca and work with you yet again.
Thank you. I think that what you and I bring to the table, the Black and Brown unity, is very important because We are able to share our different experiences, and I'm very proud of Houston for finally getting this done. We thank Bianca for her time, not only for this interview, but for all the years of hard work from her and her family. This is what community looks like. We need folks at all moments, in all lanes, and this is how we make change, one day at a time.
And as always, we did get a few action steps from Bianca. So on Monday, if you want to participate in your own way, here's what she suggests for our upcoming Indigenous Peoples Day in Houston.
They could get their internet and look up Texas Indian massacres, Texas Indian wars, and understand maybe where just 3, 4, 5 generations ago, like our living ancestors are a part of that.
That is all the time that we have with you today. If you want to let us know what you think about everything we were unpacking today, or if you want to catch any of our previous shows, you can find us at AconC Media, AconC Media, on Instagram and on Mixcloud. Houston Indy Media would not be possible without the help and the generous support of our listeners. Help keep us on your Friday night dial by going to kpft.org and go to the Donate Now button. Don't forget to choose Houston Indy Media from the drop-down menu. It's fast, easy, and you help keep independent radio alive. Thank you for your support. This was Angela.
Courtney.
Reminding you, don't hate the media.
Be the media.
Peace.
Peace.
We stand all together, one voice saying yes we can. Each one, reach one till we pull ourselves up, cause we all one fam. From the rest to the block, to the prairie, to the rock, we connect that love. Cause the people with power feel the power of the people when we stand as one.
I got you stuck off the realness. We be indigenous, you heard of us. Max Heaven, the murderer, spreading the love with the water and earth in the stand against hate. Kinda know what the purpose is. We rise, the climate is changing, signs of the times. It's time to start praying. Pray for the world and community. Prayers are more powerful when we're in unity.